Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episodes, and this is our 1412 episode, and we will discuss on technocracy. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Robin Dudley, Ali Rice, Alan, John, and Jiri, and MD Shofikur Rahman. He has a vast of experience from Bangladesh Army. Today, I gonna discuss and we're gonna discuss on technocracy. I have a written book on technology, the rule of expertise in a modern world. All of you have a knowledge and expertise on technology. So technocracy defined as the governance by technical expert has emerged as a response to the complexity of the modern society characterized by the rapid technological advancement, environmental challenge, and social economical disparities. My paper basically explored the historical development of the technocratic governance, its principle, and its implications of contemporary society. By analyze case study of technocratic system across different regions and sector, we highlight the benefit of leveraging expert knowledge to inform policy decision and enhance governance efficiency. However, we are address the inherent challenges of technocracy, including the potential for elitism, the disconnect between technocrats and the general public, and the issue of accountability and inclusivity. To achieve a balanced technocracy, we propose a strategy for fostering public engagement and integrating ethical considerations into decision-making process. Ultimately, this work advocates for a reimagined technocratic model that prioritizes collaborations between experts and citizens, paving the way for sustainable and equitable future. World Talent Economic Forum, we have thousands of experts from around the world. We have our people around 122 countries, and they always contribute through their knowledge, especially for modern science, engineering, and technology. As this is very important discussions, and this is very valuable discussion for today. Right now, I'm in Dhaka, and Mr. Shofikur Rahman, he has a vast knowledge and expertise from Bangladesh Defense, and he worked for United Nations, and he contribute for defense long time. First, I want to know from him about technocracy. Then we will move with the other expert in this discussion, Mr. Shofikur Rahman. How you want to define this technocracy? What your thoughts about the technocracy?
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharif, for allowing me to talk. You know that the common people, are always oriented with the word bureaucracy, but not that much with the technocracy, as we are in an era where there are many subjects, many issues that are very technical in nature, and the civil bureaucrats may not be aptly qualified to deal with all those subjects which are really technical in nature. So they many a time we need technical experts, subject matter experts in certain fields who are assigned with the responsibility of having enough research, understanding of the subject, and working for the national interest. The main challenge in the technocracy is that there is always a communication or understanding gap between the technocrats and their subjects and the common people in the country. As in the case of Bangladesh, we have seen many a time regarding the natural resources that a country has. The technocracy or technocrats, they are really expert on this, and there are popular understanding or consensus regarding the quantity of reserve or the availability of the natural resources, and also its potential use by the country at the time of need. So we have seen there are always popular expectation from the government regarding the use of such resources, and the government bureaucracy, because of their day-to-day workload and pressure, they are not actually um, not that much. They don't have the capacity to uh, make use of their available time for making this bridging this gap with the common people or the policymakers and the real story. So the technocrats can come forward with all the research and the technical knowledge and present with all the facts and figures, so that once a decision is made, it meets the popular demand or the people's expectation. So, you know that in a country like Bangladesh or similar developing countries, we need to have technical experts covering many areas where we have actually lack of understanding, lack of research, lack of knowledge on the issues of national resources. So that's the main challenge that I find. I'll again take part in the later stage because uh, uh, I think I leave it to the floor to have better opinion from other experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alan, you have experience from US defense. So how you want to define how you can collaborate with Bangladesh defense and US defense and develop the idea of technocracy, doing research on technocracy. I want to give thanks because you are also publishing research paper with us in our AI model and the case study. So how you want to define technocracy and how we can work together for this technocracy model.
Wow. Well, thank you for giving me a platform here. Thank you. And Dr. Sharif, I seriously think that our I guess for a moment I'd like to return to a fundamental definition of technocracy, and it's sort of like not necessarily rulership, but leadership by those who are most well versed in a technology. So, for example, I would suggest that on one level, we currently in the United States, we currently have a technocracy, but it's based upon the skill of persuasion and consensus building for fundraising. So the people who are really good at that, they're elected. And I think when we talk about technology, we're talking about when a case goes to courts about, say, software development issues, somebody in the room needs to know more than the laws that were written for copyright in the past, which is typically judges are versed on laws of the past. Um, so, and precedence cases. In the United States, the case with the Supreme Court, they're the Supreme Court because they get to go on the cases that have no precedence and create new opinions about these laws. Other judges are constrained to follow past precedent. So getting the right people, now the military does a super job at this, and it is not a very good democracy. So there's a real balance, and I think picking skills, I mean, we literally, the U.S. military trains people in a specific skill for a specific job, and their rise up the chain of command or whatever reflects their ability to continue in that field of work. Sometimes they switch, but communications people tend to specialize in communications, and the same goes for the infantry and for intelligence work. So it's almost but it's not a contradiction to democracy. It doesn't have to be. For example, we set requirements on our leaders. You got to be 35 years old to be a president and a natural born citizen to be president of the United States. We could raise those standards, right? We could technocratically say, hey, one also has to have a 4-year bachelor's education or some other commensurate education level. We can add those requirements. And I think what we're really transitioning to a technocracy and maintaining a democracy is really important. And it comes down to people, let's say, by popular vote or consensus building methods, democratic consensus building methods of some kind, need to decide what those criteria are, right? Do we want the president of the United States to be an expert in programming, an expert in AI, an expert in economics, military strategy? I mean, ideally, we would want them to be an executive who can work with the knowledge of experts, even when they are not one. And that takes a little bit of humility on the leadership part to bring together a consensus of experts who are very highly educated in their field, even when one isn't. One still needs the leader needs the wisdom and discernment, let's say, to put together the right team of experts and to coordinate their expertise the same way. So all of that said, I think there is compatibility between technocracy and democracy, and I think that we need to walk down this path carefully as we move forward, because I think people really don't want to live in a society that's based upon the efficiency, corporate efficiency or military efficiency, with rigid hierarchy and structure of that nature. So, and then I'd just like to point out a historical note, that the civil service exams of ancient China come to mind, right? So it's not a new idea. It's not a new idea, and it's probably one that's worth exploring further. I'll yield the floor. I want to hear other folks' thoughts.
Excellent. Mr. Rob, how you want to define this technocracy? What your advice? Already two experts from defense, from USA,
Well,
and
so
from Bangladesh. They shared their experience. You are from industry. How you want to define technocracy? Is it possible? What's your thoughts? How US largest corporation play the role to develop this technocracy? We know already Singapore, South Korea is a good model for technocracy. So
yeah,
what's your thought?
yeah. I think there's Singapore, South Korea. I think you could argue China is a technocracy as well now. The benefits to technocracy done right is the most powerful tools are used for the benefit of government and the people. The problems with technocracy, and we certainly saw that recently in the U.S. with Elon Musk, is often the interests of the individuals that are the technocratic individuals are orthogonal to the interests of the people, and so you get a disconnect, and so you get the people with the knowledge. They're not really doing the service of the people, and then you've got, and this is common in most other governments we didn't mention. You've got a lot of politicians that know nothing about technology, and yet they want to pass rules on technology, which means those rules often do more harm than they do good, and they don't use the efficiencies or capabilities of the technology well. The one example I had was during the Obama administration, where during the campaign they brought in some of the leading experts in large-scale database analysis, and they performed incredibly well. And then when it came to rolling out Obamacare or the healthcare program that we have here in the U.S., which is badly flawed, better than what we had, but it's still badly flawed, particularly when compared to other countries. When it came to rolling that out, they didn't use those experts. They used political appointees, and the initial web page and underlying process was so badly broken, they had to be thrown out and they had to start over. So the underlying goal for technocracy needs to be certainly having people in power that understand the technology, but also where their loyalties aren't back to their companies or revenue sources, but to the countries that they're serving, so that they're not conflicted. And so there lies the difficulty, I think, often with technocracy, is the people that are in power often are serving a different master than the master they should be serving. In other words, the people of the state, they're serving maybe the stockholders of the prior company. They're still making a significant amount of money from things other than what they're doing for government. And those kinds of conflicts make their efforts less than ideal. And their technology, instead of being applied to help people, it's applied to manipulate people. And the end result is massively suboptimal. And so the goal to use the proper tools, the proper advanced tools for the proper purpose is a good one. Doing it in such a way that you don't introduce a significant amount of bias in the process, and the result being a government that is no longer responsive to the people is very high unless a significant effort is put in to make sure that does not occur.
Excellent. Mr. David Smith, you are from one of the advanced innovative company from Texas, Austin. So what is the core philosophy behind technocracy, and how does it different from traditional democratic governance? And what do you think it will happen? It has any possibilities?
Yeah, there are subtle differences, but there's subtle things that are the same as too when you look historically at technocracy and how it came into being. Because the technocracy movement actually goes back to the 1930s. And it was originally put in place around the energy industry. So different types of technologies.
You're going to need a Q clearance.
That's right. But different types of technologies, but they're put in place. And so back then it was actually before the National Nuclear Security Administration is in place. So, very different time there. But as you begin to look at it, it really, the initial technocracy was to pose replacing money with technology, in that instance, energy certificates. And it began to change on that. But, if you look at today in its model, the core principles are expert-led decision making. And that's kind of where Rob was headed with, and where Alan was, is that there are times where experts should be in the decision-making loop. I love how the definition, this actually says expert-led. And when I put my filters on that with my view of group intelligence, and how group intelligence is the key going forward, like what we did when I was at MCC, what I did when we were at Cimatech, what we did when we were designing InQtel for the intelligence communities. Group intelligence were very big parts of that. And in some ways, if I step back and use the technocracy principle, we used many of the principles of this approach as we were designing those consortia, as we were designing the innovation organizations inside the intelligence community and inside others. So that part of the concept is really there. The other thing that is really part of technocracy is it's a data-driven governance system. And so under the base concept, policies are shaped by very rigorous research, by testing, by empirical evidence. And the goal of technocracy is to minimize subjective opinion and to minimize partisan interest. And as we know, that's really hard to do. If I look across the United States today, those are not minimized, they're maximized almost today. So some of the concepts of the technocracy of being expert-led, group intelligence, data-driven, and the other big thing in technocracy is the original design of the system was to reduce bureaucracy and red tape, because they wanted rapid, efficient solutions, kind of like what we do in the tech industry today, where we fail fast and move forward. And you see that going forward. But to answer your other type of questions, some of the places in government where I can see technocracy working well is in hybrid systems, where you blend the technocrats, the democratic approach, the regulatory approach. And what we're seeing is that oftentimes now elected officials are appointing technology experts to central roles like health ministries and others. Um, you also see in times where there's a crisis taking place in governments, uh, like in Italy during the 2011 budget crisis and others, you see this type of technical expertise coming in where the traditional government bureaucrats don't have a clue. And then you see, particularly today with the rise of digital technologies and the fact that most of what we do in the world today at least has some technology elements to it with big data, AI. You're seeing robotics, you're seeing automation going everywhere. That this is really forcing organizations to come back and say, what's happening? How can I be part of it? You know, you see today across most of the developed nations in the world, you see surveillance happening. You see resource-based economic planning. You see algorithms used in many, many different places. And so you have to begin to put that together. The other thing is that the problem with technocracy is that it lacks meaningful mechanisms for public insight and oversight, like Rob was saying. And it tends to be elitism when you look at it, because as I look globally, the people who really understand technology well are the minority. In many instances, a very large minority. And so it promotes elitism there as you begin to look at it. But you have to begin to see how to do it, because it's the problem today is governance and government is extremely complex today. You have so many big issues going on where you have the fact that government today is not about a point of land anymore, because geography is now global. When you look at most countries, it's global and no longer confined to its borders. So this type of a digital approach, a technology approach, is very critical today to manage in today's world, Dr. Shreve. So that's some of the things there and how it differs from a traditional democratic governance system.
Thank you. Thank you. We have our guest from space industry. John, are you with me?
Yes, I am. 1 second.
Yeah. John actually from space industry, so I think he has some internet issues. So in that situation, I want to floor to Ali Rice. Ali, how you want to share your views about technocracy?
Okay, well, I did some research because I wasn't really sure what technocracy was, and now I know that it's kind of based on people that have got technological expertise, and they're not voted in, and an authority brings them in to do their work. So, but I would say as well that in democracy, that there is lots of problems with the fact that people are giving, Michael Gove was Secretary of Education and he had no experience of education other than the fact that he sent his children to school. So I think with big ministry positions, that people should have expertise in the field that they're in, as opposed to, and now his ministry of and the environment, he was ministry, but essentially they rely on people that have expertise to inform their decisions. So essentially there has to be a marriage of the two, doesn't there, really? And I think the thing is that fundamentally democracy stands for the fact that people have a choice and a voice, and bring people and bring leaders in to represent them, so that they and their country is changed and impacted by people that they believe can do a good job. And essentially, for me, obviously social media and technology is massively influential. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet the people that are in this, this place. And it's kind of opened up huge possibility. So, but for me, the ethical decisions that people make and what happens with technology, it is wholly, I think, being driven by the industry itself. and essentially no one seems to be stopping it. And I don't think technocracy is the solution, because essentially people still need to kind of rein things in to make sure that things don't go out of control before they do. And essentially, I know that, somebody that's across the road from me has had cancer taken away by a robot. As in fact, two people, a close friend of mine also has just had a small amount of bowel cancer taken away by a robotic surgeon. So essentially, it's incredible what technology can do. But essentially, it has to be purpose driven. It has to be, human. So I think humanity is really important. And essentially, I think we need to keep striving forward. So there's equality and access to education and health and across the world. And essentially, there is a new world order. And my husband's done loads of dark research and all kinds of stuff that I haven't even got into. But essentially, I think people power and kind of platforms like this need to hold people to account so that decisions are made that affect people in a positive way. And essentially, I think that's fundamentally why people have voted in, as opposed to having some kind of technocrats making decisions that aren't socially motivated. As in 2013, I won Social Entrepreneur of the Year, and essentially I've always worked in education. And education in England has left lots of people behind, and essentially we have incredible education as well. My son graduated he got straight A's in his GCSEs, he got straight A's in A-levels, and he's at a great school that built a theatre in 2020. So they've got and I think one of the things that people forget is creativity is a really strong force, and essentially science and engineering, essentially, creatives are problem solvers. And the thing is, as an artist and as a woman as well, and I'm the only woman on the panel, that essentially you have to know that that you've got purpose and you're impacting people. And in education, that people have gifts and talents that are naturally there. Essentially, for me, that there's genius in everyone. But essentially, the education system still leaves some people feeling like they're not good enough and they're not capable when they're under 12. The education system has, and essentially that also causes people to go through life lost and feeling like they're not worthy to do anything. So essentially, and it's also parenting as well. People are parenting is probably the most important job we ever do. And essentially, the one thing that parents do is make sure that their children are safe and secure, and then they're happy, and then they achieve, so for me, achieve their dreams and go, so essentially it's all fundamental to people doing meaningful things, and that governance needs to be meaningful too. So, sometimes for me, there were two parties in the UK. There were the Conservatives and the Labour government. At the moment, the Labour government's in. But essentially, I think they're trying to do, I think it's 3% GDP, so that they can get more defence. So essentially, and I don't, I'm shocked that at this day there's so much war going on in the world, because I would have thought that we'd know better.
Thank you.
There's all kinds of stuff. And I spent working in the States as well, so I know the US on the West Coast really well. So that's my first thoughts anyway. So yeah.
Thank you. John, what you want to share about this technocracy, the benefits? I don't know. He has internet issue. GD, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for confirming. So I have prepared a very short, brief presentation on
Keep dropping out.
Technology-driven governance and democracy. Very short insight on the Czech Republic. So the Czech Republic has many innovation hubs, like STRV, which create innovative mobile applications and other digital solutions for public services, and Prague Smart City, because I grew up in Prague, the capital city, but also the research and development institution like the universities. Czech Technical University in Prague is making a great effort in this field. and also the Czech Academy of Sciences. This is my second example. We have applied the GDPR policy, which is a European policy for data protection. It's very important to collaboration between government and companies. Like I would like to mention a Kiwi company, which is very famous. Also, we focus on cybersecurity in the Czech Republic. There is an information security agency of national cybersecurity, civil engagements, and cultural heritage is very also important for me because the Czech Republic is very old country. And last of all, I would like to mention that it's very important to collaborate between us. So, for example, not only on this level of governments, which should collaborate together, but even like us, like individuals, we should have talks together like this, private talks, collaborate together, cooperate together, and make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
hand
Thank you.
over to John.
Yeah, John.
Yes.
Yeah, how you want to define? Do you want to share some benefit and some complexity of the technocracy?
Sure. I think the first thing is connecting with people. I think using the word expert is a really bad mistake. There's no such thing as an expert. Things are moving linear forward billions of times a second. Keeping up with that, is a joke. I think a better way to terminology is having a good understanding of a subject matter based on current interpretation. I think that's going to connect with people and resonate much better than putting yourself as an expert, which is kind of a deception. Um, I've worked with a lot of organisations. I've worked actually for the Ukraine government as a ambassador and civil community leader. I'm glad they got out of that. Also worked with Elon Musk on various projects. Travelled to Russia with him. Um, you're right about the whatever you want to call them, techno savvy people having a separation between normal people. I think that's something that we need to work on and trying to close that gap without putting people on a pedestal. I also work in a rock band that has a top 10 song at the moment, so a little bit creative. I'm a bit of a different person, but I also work with a few intelligence agencies, as I was just talking to my friend about. I know you, sir, with David Petraeus. So I think for me, connecting with the normal person is the real thing, and bringing it all down to earth. That without placing that academic terminology to it. I failed school completely. Last year, I gave a lecture at Harvard University on CRISPR gene editing. I've travelled to many countries to give lecture on photonic satellite technology. I learnt that I was what they call an inherent thinker, some shit like that. But I think it's important when you say, you should put high levels on somebody. Yes, you should. I think it should be more based on morals and ethics rather than education, because it's, you get individuals like me who don't have education, but yet leading people in certain areas. I think what you do by putting that classification on thing, you alienate people who could be a great selection, a great choice to represent you. I think that's my terminology. Currently, I'm not going to use the word, but a Google and Apple developer. So I get a fair bit of insight into how these things work. My company works in the space industry. We're currently working with DARPA with regards to their Lunar Economic Development Plan. Don't know how I got here, but I am. So I think and I keep myself down to earth. I talk to everybody that I possibly can, from on the street to congressman. I think having an individual that has a open mind, that's approachable, down to earth, and recognizes they have a talent, but don't parade around with it. I think that's a better way to go. There is definitely a separation here in regards to an act called PRISM, which is a National Security Act that collects information on every single person here, whether you like it or not. That's an interesting thing that happens on Google, Apple, Facebook, Instagram. Doesn't happen on TikTok or Telegram. or Yandex, which is interesting. I think by being aware of those sort of things first and getting ahead of that curve is really where we have to go, because a lot of people don't know that sort of stuff, and they're acting and working on principles that really aren't up to date. So that's what I think as a basic introduction. I don't know if people agree with that or don't, but for me, that's my reality. Yeah, I know the Indian government pretty well. I actually work with ISRO. Um, so, and I've been fairly genuine. Well, I'm going to use the AI term authentic in talking to people. I think that's really the way to go rather than, hobnobbing, so to speak. I mean, I could pull that out and just blow people out of the water if I wanted to, but I just don't like that sort of thing. I don't think it connects. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Rob. Thank you, Mr. Rob. How might technocracy evolve in the age of artificial intelligence and data driven decision making?
Well, so AI can be used in a couple ways. If I could divide it into two categories, AI can be used to replace people. It can be used to enhance people. And here, using it in the concept of technocracy, it would be used, I would hope, to enhance people rather than to replace, because there's probably no easy way to have a machine address the empathetical needs of a government leader. Maybe at some future point, but at this juncture, you're probably better off having people making the final decisions and having those decisions being enhanced by AIs, as opposed to having them being replaced by AIs. It's the nature of the technology. We just had the Maha report come out of the U.S., and it's pretty clear that somebody used AI to draft the report, and this then showcases what the potential downside to AI can be. I believe the reason the report has so many false references is because they dictated what the outcome should be, as opposed to asking the AI what it thought the outcome should be. So when you tell an AI to have a particular result, as opposed to asking it a question, it will try to derive information to support what it is you asked it to do. And if that information doesn't exist, it will create it out of broad cloth, and it's called hallucinating. And this Maha report has a substantial amount of hallucinations in it. The references, to a large extent, are all false, and are mostly all false. And then they just revised it with more false references, which is kind of bizarre. And again, I think showcasing that they wanted a particular outcome that was not supported by the facts. So part of what needs to go on is if you're going to have AI assist anybody, whether we're talking politicians, managers, or whatever, they have to be trained in how to properly use it. And in government, there needs to be some kind of penalty structure for misusing the tool. In other words, rather than asking the tool what the outcome should be, telling the tool what the outcome will be, and concealing that particular inherent bias. And because if you don't do that, then you're going to have AI supported corruption and bias, which doesn't do anybody any good. So at least not long term. Short term, it does nice things for the parties, but the overall efforts will undoubtedly fail, and strategically they'll harm even the people doing it. And so you do need a set of rules, policies, laws, whatever construct you want to consider, that not only require the people using the technology to be somewhat trained in it. In other words, understand the implications, the capabilities, and the shortcomings of the technology so they can best use it. And then penalties put in place for abusing that technology, much like you have penalties put in place for a graft, for doing things that are for abusing power, for misusing power. Typical governments have rules like that. We just need rules that surround AI in much the same way, that keep people from abusing the technology rather than using it for what it's good for. So when you apply AI, back to the question, properly in government, and it's used to enhance a politician, and so they're asking the AI, much like they'd ask an advisor, for their opinion, and then those opinions are considered, not necessarily adopted without consideration, but they're considered and then adopted if they make sense. Then you get what could be the best use of the platform. If, on the other hand, um, as you often have in government, where the advisors become the directors, and they're telling folks what to do, and then they're being told what it is to tell the folks what to do, then you created a corrupt system, and that corruption will result in bad decisions and unfortunate outcomes. And so the key here has to be using, like any tool, learning how to use it right, and being rewarded for using it right, and being significantly punished for abusing the tool, because you can do with any force multiplying tool, whether we're talking about a weapon or AI. Abuse needs to be significantly penalized, because you can get a amount of scaling damage that if it's not curtailed, could do massive amounts of damage to the country. And then I've got
Thank
to
you.
run because I've got to run to an appointment. So
Thank
thanks.
you.
I'll talk
Thank
to
you.
you next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you for your great contributions. Shafiqur Rahman sir, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm following. Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
okay, thank you. Can you share from your experience some historical and current example of technocratic government, and what can be learned from their success or failures? As you are, according to my understanding, you may help United Nations peacekeeping missions. Uh, so, is there any example, or you get, or you can share some of your examples or experience with us?
Yeah, from the peacekeeping perspective, globally, you know that United Nations system, uh, from the initial Chapter 6 peacekeeping missions, now as they enter the Chapter 7 peace enforcement, peace operations, there are gradual increase of technology, especially remote sensing, the use of drones, use of satellites, many things. So the United Nations system has also adapted based on their need, and we have seen an increase of technocracy also in the United Nations decision-making process, because in many conflict areas, and we have experienced the use of historical data, the operational data, and also the technological tools that are available to influence the audience, influence the people's public opinion, and also the decision makers in the same way. So, especially the current peace operations that are ongoing in Africa, we have seen more use of technological assets by the United Nations, but it's not that significant in the case of, say, from the national perspective, where the nations they have their own technical experts. They can also hire technical experts from subject matter experts when there is a necessity. In the United Nations case, especially the peacekeeping mission, there are many caveats, many constraints from the nation states regarding use of technology and also the technocrats. There, more importantly, the decisions are made based on the field commanders' experience and also the leaders on the ground who are constantly in touch or in dialogue with the conflicting parties. So the purely use of technocracy or technical expertise may be sometime dangerous, because that might be going away from the international public opinion, and also may put the uh, people on the ground, especially in the conflicting zones, having some disbelief in the United Nations efforts for peacekeeping. But in the national perspective, as I follow the discussion, certainly technocracy helps in making the appropriate decision based on technical facts, technical data, big data analysis. But what I suppose that there should be in countries where there are growing democracy still in the nascent stage, the technical decisions should always be um, uh, confirmed by the leadership based on the national consensus on that particular issue. But purely going technical may sometime create challenges for the leadership in the developing countries where the democracy is still democratic principles, governance are still in the mm, nascent stage. So there should be a I think, mixed approach where technocracy and the democratic principles should be applied together so that there is no misunderstanding and there is no gap in the understanding of the leadership and the people of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great discussion. Mr. David, in what ways can technocratic system ensure public trust? What actually Mr. Shafiqur Rahman bring uh, in our discussions? Uh, so what's your thoughts about public trust, transparency, and inclusiveness in decision making?
Well, you put a mouthful in there as you began to put the other qualifiers in that. So, if you begin to look at the system, one of the places where it can really help is as we live in this increasingly digital world, uh, it can really give more assurance that technology-based decisions have more open data on it, that there is some, even though he doesn't like the word expert, there's some more expert-driven decision making, and that strategy goes in there to support. But the transparency is the part that is real interesting when you look at the constructs for this, because if the constructs for it is open data, and if you are in a environment, a government environment where you're making data-driven decisions, which is one of the key tenets of this, uh, having open data and disclosure of the data, the methodologies, and the rationale behind these data-driven decisions allows the public to scrutinize and understand the technocratic process. And we've seen those in some of them. The other place is clear policy guidelines. You need to ensure that the decisions are supported, but something that Rob said earlier is so true. You know, most technology today, and many technologists, I hate to use that context here, is that they do not really have empathy. And the empathy is just not there. And so you begin to understand that. And that is one of the faults. But the fact that the technocrat is based on collaborative networks, on group intelligence, and multi stakeholders, that is one of the keys to making it work. And you really need to build into this, much like many other systems, a way for accountability and review. So you need to have regular monitoring, evaluation, and reporting on it. Um, and you need to be interdisciplinary. The challenge with some, because, for example, references have been made to Musk and others, is that you tend to see their stovepipes, their areas where they have their expertise. And most experts cannot extend that horizontally to the other domains. So what we see is vertically based technologist, technocrat type of decision making that doesn't flow horizontally across the different other ecosystems, which is one of the problems, but as you begin to build more of the interdisciplinary approach, it actually becomes a strength rather than a problem. And the big thing is you have to have the way to build public trust. You build public trust by education. You build public trust by transparency, and um, those all promote inclusiveness into your decision-making process. So, Sharif, that's my quick answer.
Thank you. Alan, do you think that technocracy coexists with democracy, or does it inherently undermine democratic institution or values? What's your thought?
I think it's easy to let technocracy ignore democracy. And I think the challenge is to make sure it does not. I don't think they're essentially incompatible. Uh, yeah, I mentioned college degrees and the Chinese civil service system, but I want to just give a shout out to John that, yeah, I'm a fan of Mike Rowe's message. I don't think degrees are just the way to do it. And certainly big companies don't hire upon that. They don't hire, do you have a degree in coding? They want to know, can you actually code with the systems that we use at this company? So
That's
I
right.
think, and that's not a degree issue, but it is a technical expertise issue. And how we measure and rank those technical expertises are largely subjective and also vary from industry to industry. As a young lieutenant in the infantry, it was sort of easy to rely on the expertise of others. I was new, relatively new. I'd been enlisted for 5 years or so. But it was all of a sudden my advisors were non-commissioned officers who had 10, 12 years of experience, right? And there's 5 of them. So I had a great, learning, my learning curve was long, but I had good advisors. And so I kind of kept that model. And later, I retired as lieutenant colonel. I had advisors that were experts, as we'll say. They had certainly received the training and done the job adequately enough to have made it to through their career in a few years, 20 years or so.
Good political connections.
Yeah, or possibly, yes. Depending on the skill they had, they definitely used their skills, whatever that was. There's in the military. There's a logistics branch and an operations branch and an intelligence branch, and each one of these provides their own experts. And ideally, they come together to inform the commander about all of the different characteristics of not only how they're like a in corporate world we use the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats kind of idea. So not only the strengths and weaknesses, which are internal to the organization, but also what are the opportunities and threats that are outside the organization. So those type of analysis can be, you can pump a lot more data into a computer, and you can pump even more into an AI to help with advise on those. But again, it's incumbent upon the human leadership to also understand the human factors, the human dimensions, how to reach people, how to persuade, motivate, organize, and build consensus among groups so that we can move forward.
Accurate and precise words.
Thank you. I do believe they're compatible, but again, bias can be in the coding. And so I think it's not just, let the computer decide, right, to run the traffic lights or design the hand dryers. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the hand dryer example. They called it the racist hand dryer because the sensor that turned it on, where you put your hands under the air blower, was attuned to a certain reflection of light to turn on. And so the darker your skin, the less likely that light was to reflect at the level that the sensor needed to turn it on. So it was essentially a hand dryer that was biased against dark-skinned people.
A racist hand dryer.
A racist hand dryer, right? And it was just built right
Colorful operation.
So, and I think that goes from a perspective of, if you have a room full of white engineers and they're working on this project and they keep testing the dryer. Oh, okay, we got it working now. They're not using a representative sample of who will be using the hand dryer. That's kind of the first problem, is they're not analyzing the problem. But the second piece is, I think, goes back to that idea of leaders needing to use decision makers that are educated to a higher level in their little peak of expertise. Again, like we said, those are not necessarily connected, as David says. You got your plumber, he's got a level of expertise I don't even understand. It's magic to me, right? Um, but that aside, the experts can coordinate those. It's up to the leaders to coordinate those peaks of excellence, right, and bring them to a consensus decision, or not even I use the word consensus, but a collaborative and a decision that is supportive of all the group, so to speak. Whether that's your company organization is all your group, or if you're a politician, your national or state level, city level organization is the group.
I was just going to jump in there if I may.
Yeah.
I know my son does coding. He's really good at it. He works with a few people. But I've noticed he has Asperger's. And I notice a lot of coders do have that as well as Musk. I suggested that with coding that it should be compulsory to do psychology as well, because you're creating a code that communicates with people. And most coders have, as I said, Asperger's. And I'm talking about my own son here, they don't have any concept of connection or, love or whatever you want to call that. I think psychology should be a definite must in relation to coding. I think that would open up a lot of different avenues and make it a little bit more accessible to people. I notice many errors in just about every platform out there, and it's it's challenging to say the least.
Yeah.
But all coding, these people that create this stuff, for me, are really detached.
Yeah, I concur. I'm not sure it's incumbent upon them to become, more empathetic. Sure, we want them to, but there needs to be somebody who's empathetic and understands people in the loop, right?
Yeah,
It's not
definitely.
just the expertise in coding; it's the expertise in whatever the code is about. It's
Yep.
the user interface expertise. All those work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ali Rice. You want
I
to add
agree.
any point? This technical skill developments.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because I think for me, I'm not very technical, but I know how to use things that enhance what I already do. But my eldest nephew went to Oxford Uni and did a general engineering degree, and he knows how to code. He uses AI and all kinds of things to make things easier and efficient. And I think he's very independent and slightly detached, but not probably not on the spectrum. Essentially, there is a level of him. In fact, it's quite similar to my son in the fact that they can be team players, but they trust themselves more than anyone else to do so. So essentially, that they do value their own expertise over anyone else. So, and I think the thing is that they trust it's all done because they've done it. And I think at the moment he runs his own tutoring business, but essentially, you have to bring a team in to support you. And essentially, I used to work in partnership with my husband, but now I'm back on my own. And essentially, you need different skills. And it's going back to those core skills that actually before this started, Rob was talking about having those core skills of communication and connection and bringing people in that, that have the expertise that you lack. And essentially, fundamentally, governance still needs to be about the people and the impact
Definitely.
on generally, everybody is happier, healthier, in a better position to face the future. And for me, it's the natural environment, and for me, what's interesting for me is because I've traveled around the world and worked in Malaysia and California. And essentially, one of the things that frustrates me is the Western world's very good at tapping into the natural resources of other countries that have the most astonishing natural resources, like Malaysia. And then they kind of essentially put, petrochemical plants there, or there was a whole sea that was taken away because the water was used for the cotton industry, and that's a whole nother story. But essentially, the same restrictions abroad aren't the same as here. So there's no health and safety, and essentially that we as the Westerners kind of capitalize on the fact, that it's fine if you put toxic, or heavy metals in a water source that whole populations use, because it doesn't affect them. And essentially that's not what humanity is about. So I've got lots of question marks about the way we conduct ourselves abroad, because we don't adhere to the same rules that we would here. So there's all kinds of stuff that industry do that shouldn't happen, and because it's abroad, it's okay, and it's because it's bringing money in to develop countries, it's okay, but it's not okay. GMO, so when they were up for a global prize, weren't they? What's the name? Monsanto were up for a global a prize, and essentially, if you feed Africans stuff that fundamentally poisons you, that's not okay. Essentially, you shouldn't give anybody anything. Give your own children. That's my philosophy. So essentially, there's lots of things that need to. But I think the thing is that you should treat people the way that you want to be treated yourself, or governance should be the same way.
Thank you, Jiri. What's your closing remark? Yeah, closing remarks for today's session.
Yeah, everything is clear. I have no more questions. Thank you guys for opportunity to be here with you. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Shafiqur Rahman, what's your closing remarks, and how the global north and global south can work together to solve climate problem or energy problems, or how we can make things happen? What's your advice?
Oh, thank you so much. It was a great opportunity for me to take part in this webinar. But the question that you have asked right now, I'm really not an expert to make comment on those global issues, but it was really pleasure, and I'm really enriched from the experts' views and opinion. So thank you so much, Dr. Sharif, and thanks
Thank
to
you.
all in the panel. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith, what's
Beautiful.
your closing remarks?
Dr. Sharif, thank you once again for an excellent program. And it's clear that this model offers both promises and profound challenges there. Technocracy at its core strength is commitment to expertise, to data-driven, evidence-driven type of policies, and particularly as we in society confront more complexity, more high-stake issues, and global as opposed to just local issues, it has its place. And it can drive innovation, efficiency, and long-term stability. But we also must acknowledge the risk inherent in sidelining some of the democratic participation and its transparency. And if the technocratic system fails to engage the public and communicate openly, it's not going to work well. And the legitimacy of any government, any organization, no matter how expert it is run, rests on the trust and consent of its people. So with our hockey stick growth today and using data and using artificial intelligence, it will really depend on our ability to blend the best of the technical expertise with in my concept, the enduring values of democracy, the respect for humans, the inclusiveness, the accountability, the innate participation of using the group intelligence to drive the future. So to me, the challenge we have is not to choose between a technocracy and democracy, but to synthesize their strengths and creating a governance that is both smart and just, both expert-led and people-centered. So, Dr. Sharif, that's my closing remarks.
Thank you.
Well said.
Mr. John, what's your closing remarks for today?
Well, this is my first time here. I'm really impressed by the awareness of people, and it's a really good balanced opinions. I think it's really good. What you said, David, is spot on. Getting that combination together rather than the separation, I think that's really important. I haven't got much more to say, really. I really enjoyed this. As I said, it's the first time for me, so I don't want to say too much. I'll sit back and look forward to the next one, I guess. I'll
Thank
be in
you.
touch with you, Gyro. I've sent you that email already. You'll find it enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you. Ali, what's your closing remarks for today?
Yeah,
I,
I think
was
well, essentially from my perspective on democracy in the UK, that essentially we use that ministers and the people are voted in to positions and ministries, but they have to have people that have the expertise they need to be able to make any informed decision anyway. So essentially, it has to be a marriage of the two. So yeah, and the thing is that empathy and understanding and being kind of down to earth, so you can treat anybody and talk to anyone and connect with anyone and understand what real people face every day in, day out. It's really important. So yeah.
That's really refreshing to hear that, actually. I really like that.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I agree with you, John, when you said what you said was amazing.
Thank you. Alan, uh, what's your closing remarks for today's sessions?
I think I think David summed it up really well. Expert led and humanity or people focused. Uh, um, and yeah, I just want to touch on Ali's comment about. I think it's an interesting characterization of the Western world, what our expertise is here, and that's getting resources from somewhere else and externalizing all the negative outputs, right? Like, let's send the pollution.
Well, we
Somewhere.
nearly got the lithium in Afghanistan.
Yeah, but I think I mean if you're going to have an expertise, that's great. But the idea that there's an external place to get resources from, or to go and exploit somebody else's country for resources and then to dump your trash there, I think kind of comes from that fundamental understanding, lack of the fundamental understanding that we're all on the Buckminster Fuller's idea that we're all crew on this spaceship Earth, right? We need all of us here, and we need to be pulling the same direction. And I'm not suggesting ants, like an ant hive with a single technocrat laying eggs at the top, but I think there's so many ways that this conversation can go. I don't know if David, if you were the first one to say it, but expertise led and people focused. It's got to be people focused, or it's not. It's going to fail. Yeah. So.
Thank you. This is great discussions. I think how I make the plan for this scientific book and how I see the contribution. It's actually brilliant for World Talent Economic Forum. You know that it's worked like a research center, World Talent Economic Forum. Beside this dialogue and conference, we publish scientific papers, we innovate technology, we train peoples, and we provide consultancies. This is the way how the global north and global south can work together and solve the
Influence.
complex problem. And this is the way this defense, the civil society, government agency can work and make things happen. We want to develop a productive world. We want to develop a positive world. We have a lot of good things in Bangladesh. We have a lot of good things in Asia. Also, the same way, there are a lot of
That's
good
right.
things in North Africa. We have to minimize the gap. We need to get enter to the game. No complexity, no more politics, no more investment in all of the negative things. We should invest in humanity. Especially, I always say, invest in talent. Invest behind the talent because talents are behind all of the good things. Talents are behind all of the good innovations, uh, all of the constructive work and the positive work. So this is the way how I develop this World Talent Economic Forum in institutions, and I need more of your support. With your help, we will build the better world. So thank you, Shofik Bhai, how you join and how you guide us. This is very, very
Oh,
important. And
thank you so much. I was actually not prepared to make any presentation or speak. It was a surprise for me, in future, I would like to be more prepared and contribute meaningfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, David Smith, for your continuous support. Thank you, John. You are new, but hopefully we can make a positive synergy. Ali, thank you. And Alan, how are
Thank
you
you, sir.
contributing for research? It's a very, very important. It can be a good example for our defense, right? So that how the research and innovation can play a major role to solve the complex problem. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with
You're
the
going to love
government
the new
agencies.
facial ID.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone, and share our content. And thank you for joining today's session. It's a very interesting sessions, and it's a very
Pleasure.
good industry and academic relationship. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
luck.
Thank you.